That time I got reincarnated as a demon lord, English, by LordedoMal44. 13 A little lighting Poyon, there were so many Poyon, that I feel like they were communicating with each other. I mean, is that even possible? Even though we are of different species, are we really meant to communicate with each other and settle all our arguments peacefully, by the power of Poyon? Yes, without a doubt, the Poyon, were communicating with each other. As if to answer my question, a Poyon, came from the other side. Is there a better way to communicate with people? Well, I think it's better to go back in time a little to understand what's going on, don't you? Me, Kaijen and the three dwarves were walking quite a distance. They finished explaining the basics of blacksmithing to me and told me that I could only discover the rest if I practiced. And, of course, there was the information I borrowed from their minds, which would complete my repertoire, but for now I would leave it in the hands of the sage. I don't want to see information about anyone's personal life. We arrived at a large building, whose smell of escaping alcohol made it very clear that it was the so-called Butterflies of the Night bar, and the name on the entrance sign confirmed my doubts. The language? It's the language of the dwarven realm that the sage had engraved in my head as important information, one of the pieces of information that had already been extracted and computed from everything the Kaijen and the others knew. Well, Rimuru Dono, this is the place. Let's go inside, I'm sure it will be to your liking. Kaijen opened the door and we entered without delay. It would be our impolite to keep the elven Oni-sans waiting too long. Ah, Kaijen-san. How long has it been? Yes, it's been a while. I took the opportunity to pay a visit and bring a little guest. As soon as Kaijen spoke that last part, he turned to one side, allowing the elves inside the bar to see me. For a second it was as if total silence took over the bar, but the next moment, a high-pitched sound, which I could probably only hear due to my super canine hearing, rang out from inside the bar. Kya! How cute! A blonde elf yelled that and ran from inside the bar to my position, getting to me faster than I could react and hugging me in her arms. Her strength just wasn't overcome by the pressure I felt against my body as she hugged me. Is this heaven? I'm not sure. As I was reincarnated, I don't think I ever tested whether there is a place like heaven or hell. Perhaps her scream caught the others' attention, like a beast finding a tasty prey. All the other elves inside the bar, like other hungry predators, looked our way and, as soon as they saw me, they ran towards us. Will I be devoured in this place? That's unfair. That's right, I want to hug the slime-san too. The elves around me began to hug me, taking me away from each other until, as a sort of common agreement, I was at the center of them all. All the elves hugged each other at the same time, leaving me at the center of them. And so, we return to the moment of every man's dreams. The moment of the most perfect lighting of all, where Poyon, starts talking and where all the things in this universe make sense. The image of a river? Is this the Sanzu River? I think I got so immersed in my moment of enlightenment that I forgot to breathe and am about to pass into the other world. Or was it a cardiac arrest? Wait, would either of them kill me? I don't think so. But if it's my time, I can accept ultimate happiness and leave in peace. Less than warning. Rimuru Tempest subject is in a self-induced hallucination, greater than. Oh thank you sage. Come back to reality, me. We can't cross that river. We have to go back and behold the absolute enlightenment that is before us. I see you like it, Rimuru Dono. Kaijen said this while smiling at me, bringing me back to reality and preventing me from crossing the river. The smile on his face was like he was having fun seeing me, like he's seeing a person doing something for the first time in his life, but I didn't care about that. I mean, who cares? I had the lighting. Well, shall we find a place? We have no business standing here. I said that and everyone agreed, so we went over to one of the tables. The first elf, the blonde-haired elf, took me in her arms the entire time, and once we sat down, this elf sat me on her lap. It might be a little different from the usual Poyon, but that feeling isn't too bad either, so I decided that I would engrave it in my mind so I wouldn't forget it later, when I got back to my village. All these experiences will surely be fruitful when I get back to those goblinas. And goblins. You know? To make a better village, with blacksmiths and builders and things like that, you know? Of course it was what I was talking about. Less than. Greater than you understand me, don't you, partner? Apart from all the previous Poyon, we had a very enjoyable day. Although the highlight was the Poyon. Less than. Greater than I think I better shut up. I was really scared when you just devoured the sword I made, but what really impressed me was when you made a bunch of it like it was nothing. To tell you the truth, that was a little frustrating. I looked at Kaijen, who looked a little sad. I could understand what it was like to be disappointed for doing something with too much effort and then see someone else doing the same thing easily, as if all the credit for doing it was nothing. Seeing your efforts being surpassed by someone else so easily is truly frustrating. For a second, thinking about it made me think of my brother's face, but I erased that face from my mind soon after. I can understand your feeling, but what I did is no big deal. I just had the skill to copy the things others did. If I tried to make something like that amazing sword with the techniques you taught me, then I'd likely end up with something average at best. Kaijen looked me in the eyes, our feelings meeting, and then I understood what he was thinking. A blacksmith's spirit. That's something I'll probably never have, but I liked the flame I saw in his eyes. If that's the case, then Rimuru dono, next time we see each other I will have created something that not even you will be able to create a copy of. That's the spirit. With a smile, Kaijen and I made a toast with our glasses and then downed them. As soon as they saw our empty glasses, the girls must have made some kind of signal as the Oni-san from the bar, who seemed to be the oldest and most experienced of all the elves, came to fill our glasses again. Era, Slime-san, you really liked the drinks here, didn't you? Tell me, can you taste them? No, but anything served by a beautiful woman tastes more than excellent. Era, what a flirt. Fuhuhu. As soon as our glasses were refilled, I returned my attention to the dwarves' conversation, but one of the elves, a dark-skinned, black-haired elf dressed in clothes that reminded me of belly dancing, sat in the chair opposite me. I could see a little excitement in her eyes. Hey, Slime-san, don't you want to do this? She asked as she made a gesture with her hands, moving them as if there was something between them that she was squeezing and releasing. Ha, Oni-san, don't deceive young hearts like mine. If it hadn't been for my magicule perception showing me the crystal ball that was with her, I would have believed she was referring to something else entirely. That would have disappointed me, Oni-san. Sure, why not? But what would we see? Maybe the others were curious too, but the dwarves and elves with our group were totally focused on the conversation between me and this dark elf. After thinking for a few seconds, the blonde elf who had been holding me since I walked into the bar moved as if she had thought of something. Oh, how about if we saw Slime-san's destined person? Everyone nodded at the elf's words, and I was also curious about the matter, so before I really understood the extent of what was about to happen, the dark elf in front of me started moving her hands around the crystal ball in search of my destined person. At first, all I could see inside the crystal ball was the blue color moving, like a kind of cloud or smokescreen, but that gradually changed. The crystal ball began to change color, getting darker until its color became black. This surprised not only me and the dwarves, but even the elves, who should have been used to this, and the elf who should be doing all this were all surprised by the color of the crystal ball. Does that mean I don't have a destined person? Because I handle it well, it's no problem, although I have to admit, it's a little disappointing. I don't think it's quite that. The dark elf was startled by something in the crystal ball and released it, causing it to fall towards the ground, but before it touched the ground the ball stopped falling. Suspended in midair, the crystal ball rose until it was eye level, still filled with black, and then an image began to appear in it. The first thing that appeared was a woman dressed in white clothes and wearing a strange mask. Soon after, a group of children ran to this woman and she bent down to be at their level, hugging one of the children who was the one who was crying the most. At that moment, the woman finally removed the mask, which revealed a beautiful face, although one of her eyes had a slight scar in the form of a slight burn. She's pretty. I'm not sure who said that. In fact, it could have been me who said it, or anyone else in the entire bar, but I couldn't focus my attention anywhere other than the crystal ball. The only thing I was sure of at the time was that the person who said that was right. This woman is very beautiful. And then, the image faded. For a second I almost looked away from the crystal ball, but it was still in the air and floating as it spun. Furthermore, the amount of magicule in the crystal ball kept increasing to impressive amounts and, in response, another image appeared in the crystal ball. This time the one who appeared in the crystal ball was not a human, although they were something similar. Two girls. The first of them with a slender and thin body, without many curves, and with a childish and pure appearance, dressed in the white clothes of a priestess. And the second in a slightly wilder outfit, the same as her appearance, matching with her curvy body. The two seemed to be looking at clothes that had apparently been sewn by the priestess. Are these ogres? Although they're a bit wild, they're also pretty cute. Again, I wasn't sure who had said this, although this time I knew it wasn't me. Their skin color, which was pink and purple, had already told me they weren't human, apart from the horns on their heads, of course, but I'd been too distracted even to ask the sage what species they were. I felt too hypnotized to notice whatever was around me. I wanted to stare at those two a little longer, even more than the last one, but the crystal ball went out again. Again, the amount of magicules inside the crystal ball increased, this time really scaring me. After all, the crystal ball already had more magicules than I did, but as if to answer that it still wasn't enough, the crystal ball changed to another image. The person who appeared this time was another human, a little distant to see clearly what her shape was, but there was no mistaking who she was or her beauty. This human was a woman, like the previous ones, who had black hair and also wore white clothes, a more agile outfit that seemed to be made for her to move around a lot. She appeared to be in the midst of a battle or a sword duel with dozens of enemies, all dressed just like her, and despite the difference in numbers, she seemed to maintain her superiority throughout the entire battle. This group. Aren't they the holy knights of the church? Is your fate linked to Rumanism? The image faded faster this time, going dark for a few seconds as the crystal ball's magic continued to increase. They had already reached twice my amount of magiculas when finally another image appeared. The image that appeared this time was much further away than the previous ones, which only allowed to see small traces of what was happening. All I could see was how the fists were slammed with great force between two individuals, sometimes hitting the ground around them and raising curtains of dust, and at other times sometimes lifting large rocks. The only thing that could be identified of the two was that, while one was tall and apparently bald, the other person was short, almost as if she were a child, and she had pink hair tied back to pigtails. That's not. No, it can't be. I don't know who she could be, but if it couldn't be her, then it couldn't be her. I will not question. I mean, as if the crystal ball itself didn't want questions about it, the image faded even faster than the previous ones. I wondered if she would stop, especially since the amount of magicules in the crystal ball was rampant, but it kept building up like it didn't want to stop. Or maybe she couldn't. Finally, one last image formed in the crystal ball. I say last not only because the crystal ball had 3 times my own amount of magicule, which wasn't low at all, but because a crack appeared on the side of the crystal ball. It seems that she could no longer withstand such a vast amount of magicules. I looked at the image that had appeared, and I couldn't help but be amazed. What was it? That image. That was what had just passed, wasn't it? What was appearing in the crystal ball was an image of me and the petulant Goblina, both of us walking down Dwargon Street with me in her arms. She, surprisingly, had a smile on her face as she looked at me, with me in her arms, something that, if it had happened, I hadn't noticed. I didn't understand why this image was showing up, but like the previous ones, I felt drawn to this image. Specifically to a point in the image. And then, the crystal ball exploded, disappearing into glowing dust. I worried for a second that we might get hurt, and I prepared to erect a stone wall to protect everyone, but it just exploded into dust particles. Not a sound came from either of us, not from the dwarves, not from the elves. They looked too surprised to say anything, as if they had never seen anything like this before. I, on the other hand, was trying to understand what it was that we had seen meant. After all, with the exception of Petulant Coon, I hadn't met any of the other girls, at least most of them, and I was especially worried about this holy night. Finally, after a few seconds, there was a sound. As if the silence was already bothering her, the blonde elf who had me in her arms tightened her grip on me as she spoke like she was sad. How unfair, Slime-san. Are you going to change us for others? How could you? Smiles appeared on the faces of most of those around us seeing this reaction in the elf, relaxed by her words. It was as if all the weight and confusion of what had just happened had completely disappeared with her words. I would never trade you. I will always come and visit you, I guarantee it. Slime-san, pervert. Would you really come with a girlfriend? Even though she said that, the elf had a smile on her face as she looked in my direction. Also, It seems that the exchange we had was enough to alleviate the rest of the bad mood that had formed among our group, as both the dwarves and elves smiled again, seeing the whole situation as something fun. That made me happy. Of course, after all, I didn't want to be the one to spoil our party. Still, doubt wouldn't let me sleep peacefully, not that I needed to sleep in the first place, but I had to ask. But what was it all about anyway? Even you guys were surprised, so there's no way this could have been a normal thing. A bit of tension built between us once more, but I had to endure it. I know none of us wanted to think too much about what had just happened, mainly because that absurd amount of magicules had been frightening, and I know that whatever had spawned those magicules was much stronger than my current self, but whoever this creature is was trying to get me something, so I should have known. Well, the one who interfered with that was probably a spirit. The dark elf, the same one who had proposed to make my prediction, was the one who spoke. Those words brought everyone's attention to her, of course, but she didn't seem to mind it. More than that, she seemed to be thinking about the matter hard, as if she didn't understand exactly what was going on either. When I make my predictions, the spirits show me everything. They have a great connection with people, and so they can interact with their hearts, so they see to a certain extent when two people are destined to meet. The elf looked a little uncomfortable saying this, as if there was something else behind it that she didn't want to talk about. I, of course, stayed quiet waiting to see if she would say anything. I'm not crazy enough to force a lady to say something she doesn't want to, although if she said what scares her I'd be very grateful, as at some point I'd have to find out what it was all about. Finally, after a few seconds, she spoke, although I have to say that even I was surprised by what was said. But that precision was interfered with. I'm not sure about that, but it seems that a spirit more powerful than all the spirits that normally help me with my prediction interfered with the result, as if he wanted to show you something that none of the others had the power to. I'm still not sure what that spirit could have been, or even what attribute it belonged to, it's just that it was very powerful. Maybe a superior spirit. A superior spirit? I'm not really sure, but if this superior spirit is so powerful as to have that absurd amount of magic, then it's something dangerous even for me. Of course I'm not scared, it even got me a little excited, although I wanted to know exactly who this person was who had given me this tip. After all, for better or worse, he had shown me something that could help me in the future. Well, my glass is empty. Why don't we go back to drinking? I had a lot to think about, but I was already content, at least a little. Of course, I wished this spirit, whoever he was, could give me a hint as to what was about to happen. But I would soon find out.